the opening statements of our witnesses, we will now turn to questions by the subcommittee members. The chair will recognize himself. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the Gulf of Mexico response plans for ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and Shell are virtually identical to BP's and just as deficient. As you can see by looking at the covers of these 5 plans on the screen and over my head, the pictures are the same for each plan. All that is changed is the color of the cover of the plan from each of the companies seated at the table. Mr. Tillerson, like BP on page 11.6 of your plan, ExxonMobil's Gulf of Mexico oil spill response plan lists walruses under sensitive biological and human resources. As I am sure you know, there aren't any walruses in the Gulf of Mexico, and there have not been for 3 million years. How can ExxonMobil have walruses in their response plan for the Gulf of Mexico?
Congressman Markey, those response plans incorporate a number of broad-based studies, marine mammal studies, many of which are part of the EIS and EIA statements that are put together by the MMS, and much of the response plan and what is contained in it is prescribed by regulation, including the models that are used to project different scenarios for oil spills, and many of the statements and representations that are in the plan.
These are regional oil spill response plans. How can walruses be in a response plan for the Gulf of Mexico? This is a regional response plan that each of you had to put together.
And it's unfortunate that walruses were included, and it's an embarrassment that they were included, but that's part of a larger marine mammal study that is used in preparing regional response plans.
Mr. Mulva, your plan as well includes walruses. Mr. Watson, your plan has them on page 11.6. How do you respond to having walruses in your plan?
Respond in a similar fashion. The plans are put together in response to guidelines from the Minerals Management Service.
Do you agree that it's an embarrassment to have walruses in a response plan for the Gulf of Mexico?
Certainly,
Mr. Watson.
For the Gulf of Mexico, that's not appropriate.
Mr. Mulva, do you agree it's an embarrassment to have it in a plan to respond to a crisis in the Gulf of Mexico?
I agree it's not appropriate to include for that region.
In your response plan, Mr. Tillerson, as well as some of the other plans, including ConocoPhillips, there is a Dr. Lutz who is referred to as an expert, a technical support person. Mr. Lutz died in 2005, 4 years before the plan was actually filed. How, Mr. Tillerson, can you justify in a response plan having a person who has been dead for 4 years? Is that also an embarrassment?
Well, it is, but let me point out that Dr. Lutz is part of the University of Miami's Marine Mammal Research Division, which has been an important resource for preparation of these plans for years. The fact that Dr. Lutz died in 2005 does not mean his work and the importance of his work died with him. There are many other individuals identified in the plan.
No, I appreciate
for contact.
I appreciate that.
We need expertise.
It's 2010.
Those numbers are all valid that are in the plan.
It's 2010. It just seems to me that when you include Dr. Lutz's phone number in your plan for response, that you have not taken this responsibility seriously. Mr. Mulva, the same is true for you. Is it an embarrassment to ConocoPhillips to have that as part of your plan?
Well, the plans need to be updated more frequently. What's important is the institution. That's who we refer to for support. Obviously, it is embarrassing, but we really look towards the institution and not necessarily the individual.
It just seems to me that for each of your companies, the only technology you seem to be relying upon is a Xerox machine to put together your response plans, that there wasn't enough effort put together to ensure that in the Gulf, if a catastrophe occurred, that you would be able to respond. And you, Mr. McKay, in the first week, your company developed a document that showed that your range of possibilities for an accident was 1,000 to 14,000 barrels per day. And yet, your company continually in the first week lowballed the number and said that it was only 1,000 barrels per day. You are now estimating that it could be upwards of 40,000 barrels per day, and you are today capturing 15,000 barrels per day of oil from that gusher. Are you ready to apologize to the American people for getting that number so wrong, having been so incompetent or deceptive to the American people, that proper preparations were not put in place because of BP's lowballing of the actual amount of oil that was going into the Gulf of Mexico?
First, just to be clear, those were Unified Area Command estimates. They came from the 5,000 barrels a day was an estimate done on April 26th by NOAA. Our input into that on the 27th, which was after that, was a range of 1 to 14,000 barrels a day, and our best estimate was above 5,000 barrels a day. But the Unified Area Command estimate was 5,000 barrels a day. We've stuck with that. Information has been gathered as things have moved along. As we've gathered oil.
This document that I have is BP confidential in the first week. It says 1,000 to 14,000. This is BP confidential.
Right.
The onus, the burden, the responsibility is on your shoulders. You had the technology. You were able, through your expertise, to make this determination. And I do believe that it's either deliberate deception or gross incompetence, because ultimately the amount of boom, skimmers, cleanup of the beaches and marshes and rescue of birds and turtles, the capacity which you needed in order to capture the oil coming out of that spill, testing for the health of the workers. It was all dependent upon how large the spill was. Are you ready to apologize for getting that number so grossly wrong that the capacity of federal and state governments to put in place a response was delayed because you did not do the job?
I will just reiterate what Commandant Allen said, is that those were not BP estimates. Those were Unified Area Command estimates. We did provide that.
They were your cameras at the bottom of the ocean.
That's true.
You got it wrong, Mr. McKay. Your company got it wrong. BP got it wrong.
We have provided every bit of data we've got into the Unified Area Command with government scientists and government MMS, NOAA, Coast Guard to help them understand what data we have.
On the day, Mr. McKay, that you are ready to apologize.
What's that?
On the day that you are ready to apologize, that is the day that we can begin to move forward and put together the kinds of plans that make sure this never happens again. It was BP's spill, but it was America's ocean. We need you to admit that you knew or should have known very early on that this was not a spill of 1,000 or 5,000 barrels per day. They were your cameras, your technology, your expertise that the American people were relying upon, and you got it completely wrong, either in order to limit your liability or out of incompetence. But the ultimate impact on this region of the country is profound and will last for a generation. Please, one final chance, apologize for getting that number wrong.
We are sorry for everything the Gulf Coast is going through. We are sorry for that and the spill. What I can say is we have provided every bit of data and information we have to the Unified Command, to the government, to every scientist that's working on this full time, and from that day you're talking about. So We do not have the technology to measure that. That is still under evaluation.
I continue to believe that BP is still more